I'm observing before giving talks that I don't give many talks, but at some point I'm going to have to run out of that excuse. But I've never given a talk with 2 microphones. Just as a point of practice, it's interesting for me to observe, I guess, the process that precedes offering some reflections on Dhamma, and never in such a kind of formal way here. I haven't been on a Dhamma seat, I don't think, very often. And as with so much practice, as with so much of our lives, there is a kind of dedication of the mind, the kind of preeminence of the thinking process to wish to lead the way, and I try to resist that, and it's made easy, I think, in a retreat, especially at the end of a retreat, because we're now at the end of a retreat. This offered me the opportunity to just keep letting the mind settle and see what the heart began to say. And the heart speaks largely through silence, but it offers a way into the meaning of things, into the meaning of the present. Mindfulness is an alertness, awareness, some sort of wise attention to the present moment. So in the end, I trusted to that, all of which means I didn't come prepared to give any particular talk today, although not long ago, Ajahn Stewart said, it's been suggested once or twice that Ajahn might have something to say about how to take the retreat into daily life. So that seems like a very good, a very topical thing to speak about. Of course, the responses to that depend largely on where we begin, because we always begin where we are, don't we? And each of you will have had a different experience of this retreat. You're bringing different dispositions, different character traits, memories, habits, attitudes into the retreat practice naturally. You're filtering the mindfulness of breathing, mindfulness of walking. You're filtering Anan's recommendations, suggestions through his Dhamma talks in your own different ways. This is just, these are natural human, this is our human predicament, our human condition. So to respond to a question of how to take the retreat into daily life, of course, this is going to depend on you. So ultimately, you'll be the arbiter of that particular challenge, beautiful predicament. To give ourselves to practice in this kind of way. And by the way, just, what do you think? What do you think is statistically speaking in the world? How many people do you think in the world of whatever it is now, 8 billion or so, how many people do you think would be disposed to getting up at 4 a.m, begin chanting and meditating at 4:30, eating 1 meal a day, sitting, some long hours on fairly hard floors? How many people do you think would be willing and actually give up their somewhat comfortable daily lives in order to come to a different country to do it? I don't think so many. And this is one of the things to reflect on, because it's very easy for any of us, I think, to feel that we're not making progress, that we don't know how to go forward. We see our habits return. We see our old mind states return with a vengeance. And we forget often to just give ourselves some space by looking at things with some perspective. And in this case, it's worthy of attention that not many people have the kind of merit to bring them to such a place and sit, even though we have a few fans in whatever it is, 30, 35 degree heat on a hard wooden floor, and listen to a monk rambling, trying to gain some gradual coherence in these thoughts. So one of the characteristics of returning to daily life is daily life returns to us. I mean, all of those, some of those things, characteristics of your life, of your experience, which you're used to, petty irritations, little arguments, little issues you have with a family member or a work colleague. Frustrations you have in daily traffic, any number of things. These things will come back to you to some degree. So what do you do about that? Maybe you're returning to a life in which you had to set aside a few duties, and now you return and, there are these things that I have to do. Or there's work you very well know was left intentionally but unavoidably undone at work, and now you have a little bit more to attend to when you get home. Many things like this can crop up. Well, the first thing is that you've made mountains of merit by doing something unusually good with your lives, with your time. You've come to morning and evening practice and afternoon practice. Every day you've listened to the Dhamma of a well-practiced monk and heard reflections from many other monks as well. You have encouraged one another. You have borne with frustrations and the impact of having a body in this particular form. You've left your, to some degree, comfortable home life to live in a far more Spartan manner, and endured that with seemingly quite good cheer, I would say. So my meal began with this beautiful occasion of your offering these robes and other requisites, as you've been doing each meal, but these robes in particular, just before the meal was formally begun. And I just had so much mudita for this occasion, for each of you who were bringing whatever, or simply rejoicing in the fact that a friend or family member was able to bring a robe for this occasion. Seeing this line of joyous, anticipatory faces, offering them to such a wonderful monk as Ajahn Anan. And just calling it to mind brings up this sense of the moral beauty and significance of occasions like this. They're so unique in human life. The Buddha spoke in great praise of supporting the Sangha, and spoke about the meritorious karma and the results of such karma in one's life. Now we don't see the operations of karma in a sense. We don't. We're not looking into the software or watching the algorithms work in the great karmic machine of the universe. And sometimes we may be, therefore, doubt that it has so much value. But if you remember what was going on in your heart, your mind, when you were lining up this way, or observing some dear friend or family member lining up and being ready to offer this robe, you'll recognize, I think, something of that beauty. And it's something that can return to you simply by the wise use of memory, sanya, imagination, just bringing this scene back to life. It can sponsor a great deal of joy in the midst of any life, I think. And then Lumpur Bunshu came in, and personally I've only seen him once or twice at Wakapan gatherings. And my memory for names is not so good, particularly when I need to know the name of someone. And so seeing Lumpur Bunshu here and seeing this just very simple, gracious, wise smile of this very elder monk who practiced with Lumpur Cha these long years ago. What I'm bringing your attention to is something which we can work with, and something which I remember Ajahn once recommended to me, which is using the memory in a skillful way to bring to life again, to bring our attention back to some meaningful moment when the merit of simply being alive and being willing to undertake these practices is fully present and engaged in and animated in a life. I remember asking about this once after Ajahn Achalo and I had been to India again, and Ajahn said to me, well, when you're back at Anandagiri, remember some place in India where you were, and say in the Mahabodhi temple. There's those of you who've been there, right at the Bodhi tree itself, right in the center of that sort of fenced enclosure, there is a little niche, a little recessed niche where people often go and just place their heads and perhaps offer some prayer, some dedication. And for me, that's it has to be one of the sweetest places in the world that I've ever been to. So I'm sort of bringing it to mind now. Just thinking of how many devotees have come and placed their head there and opened themselves to the Dhamma in gratitude and in appreciation and in inspiration. Millions, I guess. So he said, well, call that to mind, and then bring it to mind when you're, say, at the Chedi at Anandagiri, or I don't think the Chedi existed at that time, but in other words, bring it into your daily life, wherever that life is led, here and now. So it becomes, in other words, a resource for a practitioner, this act of memory, this very precise act of memory. So I may, who knows, maybe in some Dhamma talk in the future, I will once again bring to mind the line of so many of you with your robes being offered, being ready to offer to Ajahn and the Sangha here. That was, for me, a very precious moment, a kind of little cap of the day of this last day of the retreat. That's maybe not something you'll do in the middle of the workday when you're in your cubicle, sitting at your at your laptop or sitting in traffic, perhaps, there are much less exacting things that you can do, such as watching your breath. When you're at a red light, what is there to do? Your impatience can never impact the speed with which that light changes. In fact, there's a kind of elastic quality to time sometimes that seems to occur then. So just bring your mind back to your breath. What could go wrong? Or bring your attention to the feeling of your hand on the steering wheel. Remember, the first foundation of mindfulness is the body. We've always got our bodies. And so much of our difficulty, so much of the complexity of the lives we lead, or think we lead, occurs because we complicate the moment with the stuff of thinking, of expectation, of remembering, of anticipation, of frustration, so on. If you're sitting at a stoplight and what your attention is brought to is the feeling of your hand on the wheel for a few moments until the light changes to green, what can be the harm? What's more, when a habit along these lines is developed, the feeling of the water as you're washing the dishes, that moment before you get out of bed, as you just recollect the feeling of the body, feeling of the abdomen perhaps, just getting a sense of that, spending an extra 3 seconds before you get up out of bed. The day is set in these terms, is populated with opportunity for mindfulness. It never leaves. It never leaves us, never grows old. And in this way, mindfulness, if it is brought into some sort of habitual form, it refreshes the experience of the day, whether the day is at Wat Makchan or in Kuala Lumpur or Bangkok. Doesn't matter. It's in our hands, it's in your hands. Now, many things, social interactions, many things take place far too quickly, seemingly, for mindfulness to catch in the way we wish it would, we wish it could. So we snap a response to someone out of irritation because they've asked us to do something and we didn't want to do it, or they've been unreasonable with us. So we become snappy. We see something maybe a little bit unkind, or we walk away without saying anything, but it's obviously meant to be an affront of some kind. And mindfulness in such occasions is likely not quick enough, is not strong enough to be present and stop that, to offer that wholesome restraint that we would love to be able to experience. But we then have the opportunity to sit with that. Once again, what do? Well, you can bring your attention when you're back at your cubicle, or once again in your car, or whatever, but just a moment. Bringing the attention back to the breath, just one or two deep breaths, observing that, being present with the frustration. Yeah, with that sense of irritation, noticing it. Because there's a sense in which nothing can withstand our attention when it is honest and modest and clear. We're not trying to get rid of it. We're not trying to deny it. We're not trying to force it out of the mind in that moment. We're simply being honest with what it presently is. And when that occurs, frustrations of this kind often we begin to see them cracking, dissembling, dismantling, I should say, falling away. Well, daily life doesn't always offer these little spaces, maybe, we think, okay? But we have our life back at home. We've got the time in traffic when we're sitting at stoplights, maybe. As busy as any day is, we've got a couple of times, I suggest, when we have space, when we've got some degree of calm. And that's usually at the very beginning and the very end of a day. I think Ajahn has recommended giving attention to meditation in the morning and in the evening. The morning is a beautiful way to set up the day because it establishes a sense of peace, tranquility, and even if the meditation on that particular day does not really seem to lead to any real peace, there is nonetheless the reiteration of this habit, the strengthening of this habit. Beginning of my day, I've gotten up whenever half an hour earlier than I would have, splashed water in my face, sat down just for 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, and established some sense of ease, maybe generated some metta. And this will change the character of much of the day. At the end of the day, there ought to be time for this as well. And because you've been at this retreat, you'll know more acutely the importance of regular practice because it's been required of us all. But even if a day were to be so long and grueling that it didn't seem to allow for us another half an hour at the end of it to sit quietly somewhere, at some point you're going to be in bed, lying on your back, and to fall asleep requires some comfort, some ease, some quiet. So there you are. What to do. There's a good opportunity just to bring your attention to your breath again. Maybe restore a sense of metta. Remind yourself of the value of a loving heart. You'll sleep better and make it more natural, perhaps, more easy to get up and want to sit again before the day begins again. What else to do? Well, here's a practical. I brought this not to read from it, but not everybody maybe is inclined to this sort of thing. But if you're all a kind of wordy fellow or lady, I've enjoyed. I think many of you probably too have enjoyed reading through sutta literature or the Dhamma talks, transcribed Dhamma talks of many great teachers. And you'll encounter a passage that's of particular interest, that sort of strikes you in a particularly relevant and pertinent manner. Get yourself a little book like this, write it down. Or Dhamma passages. Everybody knows if you've at all acquainted with Buddhist teachings, you'll know it's a tradition in some extent, to some extent of lists. So remind yourself of some of the lists, and you'll find one or two of them become favorites. You probably don't need to know them all. I remember, I think Ajahn Dun said, Arahants don't need to know much. They just need to penetrate the 5 khandhas and dependent origination. A couple of short lists. There's a little bit more than learning the list to penetrating it, but nevertheless, it's very helpful to know the list. This might sound a little silly anyway, but you've all got fridges, I expect, and you can get a fridge magnet, no doubt, for fairly low cost. Write down your favorite list and put it on the fridge. You pass it every day, 5 or 6 or 20 times a day, and your attention is drawn to something. something of Dhamma, something. These lists, by the way, have a kind of, I feel at least, they have a kind of energy to them. For someone who has just thought about contemplating one of these lists, the 7 factors of awakening, for instance, the Four Noble Truths, why not? 3 characteristics of existence. But just seeing those words in those particular orders, for me, has generated has become a source of reflection often, which I found very valuable. Very often you may find yourself reflecting on the possibility that the order of the words, the order of these particular factors, has itself a kind of generative quality. One thing perhaps leads to another. You can find these things out for yourself. But it maybe sounds a little pedantic, but I would recommend this, at least for some of you that have this kind of mind. But by all means, avail yourself of some little book like this, easy to carry around, and got a few poems in there, lots of lists, lots of beautiful Dhamma quotations. And I can pick it up at any time and just remind myself of something, bring some freshness into the moment by reflecting in a very directed manner on the words of the Buddha himself or some great teacher, and therefore bringing a kind of lens of clarity to any given moment. And then you'll find perhaps that you keep being drawn back to 1 or 2 of the passages that you enjoy. Why do I enjoy this particular one? Maybe it's cultivating or insisting that I reflect in a particular way. So this is just a possibility for any of us returning to our normal lives. There's something I've touched upon, and which I don't know if I can elaborate on any further, but because I don't think, obviously we simply don't have a wise enough, a deep enough, a broad enough view of the human condition and our own condition. We're born into these lives with our eyes shut in a way. We don't, by far the most of us don't know what brought us into this particular life, what particular lives we've had in the past, and what kinds of things we really need to learn foremost, what kinds of obstacles we're likely to encounter owing to the great karmic machine that we abide in. So we don't, on the one hand, we don't have any clear way of assessing this life and countering the kind of inner tyrant that most of us have at some point, at least. The old parental voice or the voice of the critic. We're Dhamma, my abbot at Tisarna, used to always call the inner tyrant. That critical voice, never quite good enough, not doing enough, not. First of all, when you're a kid, you're not big enough, you're not smart enough, and then you're not trying hard enough because you're too lazy. And there are all kinds of voices of this kind. You're not pretty enough, you're not handsome or strong enough, you're not whatever it is. Now, we as we mature, these voices also mature. We need to do better in university, perhaps, or we need to get a better job, or we didn't get that contract, or whatever. not in a nice enough house, or on and on and on. So these, I'm sure most people have recognized these things from time to time, at least, these kinds of voices in practice. And it's not rocket science to say they do us no particular good. You know? So you might say we dispel them through the cultivation of meritorious states of mind, beautiful states of mind, by dwelling in loving kindness, by cultivating it with some earnestness of intent. We dispel them and come to understand them through reflection in various ways. And sometimes maybe we put them in some kind of perspective by again recognizing the rarity of any human life that is led in such a way that we are encouraged to, well, for monastics here, to ordain, we're led, some of us who are not Thai, we're led to a foreign culture to ordain under a monk whose language we don't understand, whatever it is. But all the rest of you too, who have given so much of your daily time, energies, your wealth, because of your generosity, to come here. The rarity of this, I expect it would take a kind of poet or some sort of celestial statistician to really to give a fine enough account of how rare these things are in human life and in the life of samsara. And so to account for the preciousness of these kinds of practices and the kind of intentions, the intentions that lead you to these practices, there is a tremendous rarity to this, I would suggest. And that rarity comes in the form of beauty, spiritual beauty. It's something to take note of and to respect, to appreciate, to rejoice in, coming to this great word, mudita. I think I have come to the end of this for now. I'm happy to respond to questions you might have, but I'll end with my best wishes.
Anyone has any question?
While you're thinking of a question, here's a quotation for you. This is from Lumpur Suchito, an English monk, and I believe I took this from his. He wrote this in the early '80s. He wrote out in his own inimitable calligraphy the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. And in his introductions, he said this, which I've always simply loved. What sustains the spiritual life is that it becomes independent of one's volition. It has a life of its own that comes to recognize and serve. One of the reasons I like this so much is that so much, at least of my own practice, and I think of many of our practices you might agree or not, but is in meditation learning how to get out of the way. Just absent that sense of self and simply see what's happening in the moment through awareness. And over time, something develops. There being a sense that there's more to this life than my willing and wanting. There is an agency at work. It takes on a character, a flavor, and a kind of power, and it's directed in a particular way. As we know, the Noble Eightfold Path. We just have to stay on it, you might say, and it only leads in one direction. So the agency of the path, the agency of our good intentions, takes on a kind of character, which is sustaining and enlightening in the final analysis. Do you have a question?
Thank you, Ajahn, for the talk. And during the past few days, sitting meditation, I find it very rewarding in terms of getting my mind settled and able to observe and see things flows. Some things raise and fall, and I understand that this kind of experience.
Maybe you need to speak up. I think in the back they can't hear you. Please.
Sorry. Can I repeat again? Then
sure.
In the past few days, meditation. I have a very good sitting experience, having been able to watch and then see my mind raise and fall, passing by. It's just a fantastic experience. But knowing this, I can't expect this for every sitting. And then I do away with some tricks. I find something it's manageable if I want to have not the same experience, but a good start with the sitting. For example, getting a good routine, getting enough rest, and not eating too much. I'm doing more work sometime if I feel drowsiness. Now, my question is back to the workplace in the normal life. Yep. Is that advisable, or is a good way to carry on the practice? For example, if I want to do a sitting and cut down the workload on the day, the distractions, and trying to do some preparation, make the sitting more manageable.
If you just repeat that last section, so you have a suggestion that you're wondering if it's going to work, and that's the question, and I need to have that again, please.
When go back to the workplace in the normal life, it's difficult to expect something. We have it here during the retreat, but I'm just thinking of whether we can manage it in the ways that every time start the sitting, we have a good preparation. For example, on that day, if it's a moon day, observant day, sitting, cut down the workload and be mindful on what doing on the day before I go to the meditation.
Yes, You know, any way of inserting some sort of skill into the daily life is going to be helpful, because in part what you're doing there is adding mindfulness. You're bringing your own intelligence, inquiry, and mindfulness into the question, not of how to get this workflow done, but the question of how to some degree, keep a sense of this, my practice, my mindfulness restored, fresh in the middle of life. So anything like that can help. You did touch earlier on, though, the sense of expectation, and yeah, that's what we want to avoid. If I do this, I should be able to get this. Yeah, there should be a result. I should be able to find the result. Just try it out and see what's skillful, see what works. If you're self-employed, then doing something along the lines of the moon observance days might work. Other people might just find, well, I can't, if a full moon is on a Wednesday, it's kind of difficult, but maybe there's a time every Sunday or Saturday afternoon you can really devote to practice, for instance. But here's another little trick I had years ago. This is when I was an early young. I was never that young as a monk, but I mean, I was so we were doing a lot of work. My first monastery, we did a lot of work all the time, and most of the time, and I started finding frustration with the way things were happening and irritation developing. The sequence of events didn't make sense, or just as you're starting to get doing this, you're told to do something else, whatever. Just regular human stuff. And what I did was, someone had given me a little timer, and I think actually Lumpur made mention of this. I don't remember the actual context, but they gave me a little timer. You could set it at any number of minutes. I chose an arbitrary number. 27 minutes, I think, was my arbitrary number. And all I decided to do, and it gave me a little buzz that actually vibrated on my belt. And all I needed to do was, whenever it buzzed, I told myself, you're not in charge. You're not in charge. It's not your call. This worked. That was set to the particular context, because I had an abbot, and he was telling us what to do and what needed to be done, and go here, go there, and so forth. So it just, this isn't your call, buddy. You're not in charge. Now, that little reminder could be obviously tailored exactly to your needs. Where's my mind? Or where's my breath? Where's my breath? Or, where are my feet? Where are my hands? Or whatever it takes. Remembering the body is such a precious. We begin here, in our practice. In many important ways, we begin with the body, I think. So just tailor it to your own particular circumstance. Where am I now? What is this? What is this? Where's my breath? Where's my abdomen? Where's my nose? It's just something tailored to your particular way of practice. So get yourself a little timer, a little buzzer.
But sometimes having good experience after the meditation, it just encourages you to do the next. So it's quite difficult, not expecting, but you're automatically clinging to what you have before. Try to carry forward and doing more.
Yeah, reality will finally convince you otherwise. Don't worry. Yeah, what can you say? Humility, for instance. Just if there's some way that you can just, again, I'm not in charge. This isn't actually my practice. I put the conditions together and it unfolds in a way which the complexity, the richness of life at this time provides. I'm not in control. That is, the little me, the little thinking mind isn't really in control here. I have my precious little desires and ambitions and all the rest of it, but they don't really speak to the matter at hand. which is reality writ large. That's what. So some kind of language maybe around that fact. I'm beginning. You know, this old, at least in the West, this is a very famous book by Shunryu Suzuki, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. So finding some way of beginning every practice with this beginner's mind. You know, the fact that I almost think I was almost getting enlightened last retreat, it has no particular bearing on my sitting right now in my living room. It's just a brand new day. Yeah. But I think anyone here can appreciate that particular question and the kind of predicament it seems to bring to us, because we all sit with desire. It's the nature of the human condition, isn't it? Yeah. And it's gonna be a teacher, because you'll be thwarted again and again and again. Finally, you'll figure it out. Yeah, it takes time, but some humility is helpful, I think. There are things at work here that are far greater than our willing and wanting.
Okay, hello. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
All right, first, thank you for the talk. It was very inspiring. Then I have a question about ordaining. So I progressed quite a bit on the path, and this is not a question if I will ordain, but when. And now the thing is, I'm also not the youngest. I have a lot of attachments, and I don't want to hurt anybody. So perhaps you can elaborate a bit on how to do that in the best way.
Yeah. Well, good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, we can't control the responses of others, because they'll have their particular. You probably are old enough now to know that you got your attachments, and that they come at a cost, and that they are not always predictable, and so forth. Well, everyone you know is in the same predicament. Yeah, so we can't really predict how if you go through this, how our expression of intention to leave will go down with people. What we can do is our best. The good thing, unfortunately, it's also your best will get better, but you can only do your best now, and enter into these forms of leave taking with a good heart, and trying to find the right time and place, and be as simple as you can, and try to be humble in the face of sometimes resistance and anger and whatnot. Hard to know what comes of this. And some of them may come around in the end and see people that really love us, I think, often begin to see the effect it has on us, and then appreciate maybe the courage it takes and the dedication it requires. And some people, it will stimulate something in them which is difficult to manage in this lifetime, perhaps. And so we gain friends and we lose friends in life. That's just one of those things. So it's a crossroads of sorts. And but you can't control it. You can only do your very best, and meditate on things, generate love and kindness, be as skillful as you can with your speech. Don't try to explain yourself too much, because you can't. You don't know enough yet. About quite often we're stimulated by intimations that we're not fully cognizant of. We're not really aware of what's leading us to this intention necessarily. Why not? And we certainly don't know what the outcome is going to be. I don't know if you're married, or if you know married people, and becoming married is that's a fairly sizable. It's an adult portion, as I remember hearing it described once. It's and no one who is about to embark on marriage really understands what's going to come of it. The difference, though, is that they see married people that have returned, their parents, and people all over society have not been married, and then they got married, and then something comes of it, and it looks sort of like this. And so we have models, but if you don't come from Thai culture, say, We don't have many models for renunciate at life, so we don't really know what's going to come of it. We don't even have much of a sense of what might come of it. So it's a very noble intention, and it perhaps comes from some very deep part of your being, and a part that you likely don't fully understand, and that's normal and okay. And
Pavaro, we have a question from the online retreatant. Hi, Ajahn Pavaro. May I know if clinging to the pocket sutta to bring along wherever we go out is considered as a ritual form of practice, just like some Buddhist tradition where they wear Buddhist beads? Thank you for your guidance here, Ajahn. Happy to see you for the first time today. Mahasadhu.
JC, I didn't hear the first part of that question, please.
May I know if clinging to the pocket sutta to bring along wherever we go?
Oh, you mean this?
Yes.
Oh, I don't cling to it.
Is considered a form of ritual.
It could be, sure, it could be. Anything can be. We have names for these things, obsessive compulsion and all of this. I mean, we have all kinds of fancy psychological language. The number of steps on your walking path. I mean, we can make a ritual of anything. Yeah, it depends how you hold it, that's all. And half the time I don't hold it. But I just kind of love this thing, that's all. Yeah. But yes, anything which is clung to in the matter of practice can become a kind of ritual, can be kind of ritualized. And a ritual, I mean, we chant morning and evening, pujas every day, and we have many rituals, by the way, in Buddhism, don't we? So it's a matter of how it is that we hold these things. I could, but maybe I won't talk about Confucius now. That might not be appropriate. Just to say, though, that there are rituals in human life, and the fact that we call it a ritual doesn't mean that it's unskillful. It's how we practice with it, what we do with it, what we expect from it. We have forms of greetings. In some cultures, there's this handshake, and on and on and on. Now, if we expect something from that handshake, and if someone refuses or forgets to shake our hand, and then we take something from this and cannot let go of that because they've broken some social contract, or it means something about what they think about us or something, we're holding that in the wrong way. It might have just been an act of inattention on the other person's part. But the nature of human life is that there are regularities to it, and if we use these regularities in mindful, skillful ways, it's very good. That's why getting up at a certain time in the morning is a good thing. Is that a ritual? Well, it's up to you. It's up to how you hold it, but getting up at a certain time in the morning, deciding, and then meditating for 35 minutes or 27 minutes or whatever it is in the morning, that can be a very good thing, usually is. But it can be a ritual, I suppose. So a practitioner needs to begin to suss this out, to recognize what it is that might make of something an unskillful ritual. It's a very interesting question, but no, I don't think my little black book is ritualized in any way. I just kind of love it, that's all.
Ajahn Pavaro, is it all right to take one more question?
Oh, yeah, sure. By the way, the book, it doesn't even have to be black. Just so.
I was just thinking out loud, does this ritual lead to attachment or clinging? Because we do it every time, no? Then does it lead to, just seek your opinion on that. Thank you.
Well, many of you in here are parents, I imagine, right? Had little kids, and you tell me. Some days you have your dinner at, your evening meal. I'm assuming most of you have an evening meal. So some of you, you'll have it at 4:30 in the afternoon. Sometimes it's 9:30 at night. 10 after 7 or whatever, and the kids are supposed to come to that meal at various times. What would that do to their sense of the family life? Would it be good for the digestion? Would it be good for your digestion? The routine of your day. It's just human. We are patterned creatures. We take an in breath. We take an out breath. We get up, we take one step, and then we follow with the other step. There are these patterns to our experience which are just indelible, part of human life. So we respond to regularity in this kind of way. It's a very good training for the mind. You can ask yourself, well, tomorrow I'll get up at 3:30 and meditate for an hour. And the day after that, I'll get up at 5:15 and meditate for 12 minutes. And then, you can set a whole list of things like that. See how long it would last. And what would happen to you wake up in the morning, do I meditate? No, I have to wait until, 7:15 or something. Or no, I'm meditating. What time? Tomorrow I'm meditating at 10:30. And then for what was it now, an hour and a half. And then, we respond, the mind responds to wholesome regularity. This is just the intelligent use of our energy. Now, as I said earlier, you can make of anything which is regular a ritual. And if you've ever read about obsessive compulsive disorders, for instance, and the folding of socks and the turning on and off the water tap or whatever it is, and to actually hear a fulsome description of what a mind is doing when they're in the midst of folding their socks and putting them in the drawer and then taking them out again and refolding them and putting them back in the drawer 5 or 10 or 20 times, literally sometimes. That's the ritualization of behavior, which doesn't serve the person. In fact, it inflicts on them a great deal of suffering and confusion. So we're simply trying to regularize certain aspects of human life, of our lives, which are wholesome. In this case, you've come to a retreat, and you've engaged in morning and evening practice, afternoon practice. You've done some walking practice. Some of these things might really appeal to you. So the suggestion is simply to begin to insert these, or continue to insert these into your normal life. Now, if you miss a day, and then you're beating yourself up for 3 days, in which you're also not meditating because you're still beating yourself up about it, then you might ask, how am I holding this pattern? This pattern, maybe I'm holding it in the wrong way. But to establish a pattern like this is very wholesome for the mind. Because the mind needs, just like that child, I think, is going to respond, not just mentally and emotionally, but, oh, my mother or my father care for me. It's 6:30 and here we are eating again. It's also good for the digestion, for their growth, yeah? Something about the nature of family life, of individual life, of any life, is going to respond to this. But if we hold it in an unwise way, it can become ritualized and quite unwholesome, and actually even pathological. But this is up to how we're dealing with these things. Another question, JC's got a smile again.
Yes, the question keep coming in. So maybe we take the last question.
Sure.
Ajahn. Yeah. Dear Ajahn, which monks do you find inspirational and why?
How long do we have? Which monk? As if there's one. Well, let me end the way I was going to begin today. Insofar as I planned this talk, I was going to say something about being here as a visiting monk, participating in this retreat, and just how impressed I've been. I mentioned it to a couple of the residents here with whom I can converse in English, but just how appreciative I am just personally for the care that they had the time to give me. But more to that, the energy, the intelligence and the care that they've taken to arrange the retreat as they have. I'm thinking of, well, any number of them. The translators are wonderful translators. The technical people who, kind of manage things, and not just monks, of course. We've got the irreplaceable JC there. But all of these things, and things that I'm not even aware of, I had nothing to do with the planning, and I am unaware of what goes into this in a place like this. But I was remarking by email with some friends, it's 70 people, and they just fold into a place of this size. You don't even notice it. It's very skillful. Obviously, it's a large institution, but it's also very, very skillfully managed with such care. And I'm very, very appreciative and mindful of that. So, I've known Lumpur Anan for a number of years. I have been in his presence. I've listened to him. I don't speak Thai more than a few words, but I've just always been deeply inspired by his presence, his warmth, his wisdom, and just thinking about the Dhamma talks that I've heard translated, the breadth of his examples from the Buddha's life, from the life of disciples, various lists, his understanding of lay life and various predicaments. His understanding of the human condition, and day after day, he just brings all these elements into a kind of constellation of meaning, which I imagine all of you would agree is unusual, very precious, and very beautiful in its own way. I feel very privileged as a monk just to be able to be around such a person, such a human being. Sometimes in a little bit more private circumstances, and to intuit something of the depth of his understanding and his deep selflessness. Just such a beauty in his warmth. And I've been around a few monks like this, but Ajahn for me is a well-practiced monk that I've seen probably more than several other monks I can think of, and so he's special to me. But I've had just so many wonderful teachers, my Upachaya, Lumpur Sanno, and of course I've been around Lumpur Sumedho many times, and it's just a grand thing to have these kinds of people to some degree in our lives, even on the periphery. I'm sure you all feel this too. Just when you're in the presence, to see Lumpur Anan today coming and grabbing Bunchu and the sweetness of that old relationship and all his funny stories, so full of kindness and good humor, and so